Hi, I'm Kevin Stevens, Dean of the Quinlan School of Business. Like you, I'm looking forward to an inside look at Rambler basketball. I got to tell you a couple of stories. So I had the privilege of being at some of the games on the way to the Final Four. I'll never forget the game against Miami when Dante Ingram hit that shot from half court to win the game. And I'll bet Colin Calvey, my senior development officer, will never forget that either, because I didn't mean to, but I picked her up and twirled her in a circle, and we just laughed. It was just a moment of pure joy. And then we did something that was pretty interesting. We had a faculty and staff meeting. You can imagine those are always fascinating events that people are really clamoring to attend. And I had the men's basketball players who went to the Final Four waiting outside till the end of the meeting. And you may remember that of the 12 men's basketball players, 6 were in Quinlan. And in fact, the 2 starting guards were finance majors. And when the men walked in and the faculty and staff stood up and applauded them, there wasn't a dry eye in the house. And it was so evident that the student athletes knew the faculty, knew the staff, and the staff and the faculty knew the students. This was the real deal, and is maybe ever so proud to be a Loyola alum, to think that that's the type of men and women athletes we have here. So that was 3 years ago, but today the drum keeps on beating. Many of you probably saw in the paper that Cameron Krutwig, our center, who played on the team as a freshman and now is leading the team as a senior, is in rarefied company, where he is now one of 4 players: Oscar Robertson, Larry Bird, Hersey Hawkins. This is the company that Cameron Statistics are bringing him into. That's fabulous. So I know you're looking forward to a great game tonight. I know you are as proud as I am as a Loyola alum to say that we continue to do it the right way. We continue to play hard-nosed, smart basketball, and we continue to have hardworking, smart students on the men's basketball team. Looking forward to the game. Go Ramblers.
Welcome, I'm Rick Sint, Associate Director of Alumni Relations and Special Events for Quinlan. Typically around this time of year, we'd be hosting you all on Lakeshore campus for a nice reception, followed by going to Gentile Arena to cheer on the Ramblers. Sadly, this is not our reality at this time, so instead, I'd like to try to give you a behind-the-scenes look at how basketball teams and sports teams in general can use data to inform their strategy. Later, we'll also talk to Clayton Custer and Patrick Wallace about how they specifically use data in their positions with the men's basketball team. Right now, we are joined by Clinical Lecturer of Sports Management, Zachary Binkley, and he's going to walk us through a bit about sports data management, what it is, how it works, and how teams take advantage of it. First, let's talk about what data teams can collect and how and when they use it.
Yeah, absolutely. Looking at data collection for the sport of basketball, right? I always take a holistic approach to working with athletes, trying to take care of their mental and their physical health first. If those 2 things aren't in check, then the rest of the data, regardless of points per game, doesn't really matter, especially at the college level. So data collection, I kind of put this into 4/5 categories. The first one being health and medical data, working with the athletic training department, working with your performance coaches, your performance trainers, to get those kind of measurements and get that data in is the first step. And I think COVID really reinforced that, right? Like, we can't play unless we have good, accurate health data to make decisions upon. 2, then off the health and medical data is their performance data, which does impact their nutrition, their sleep quality, things that we know that impact their overall performance. That is tied to health and nutrition. So collecting data on calorie intake, sleep cycles, things like that can really give an athlete the next step and an advantage over their opponents. So I always kind of factor those first 2 in, right? The first 2, health and medical, and then looking at performance health, / performance nutrition, looking at data points for those. Then you look at the actual performance of the sport itself. So you can call it old school stats, really the traditional ones where you're looking at points per game, assists, rebounding, the traditional things that we've tracked over time does have value. Its biggest value is its ability to be communicated. Everyone knows what rebounds per game is. You might not know what a usage rate percentage is, things like that. So old school stats, if you want to call them that does have a place. We do collect those data points. And really its biggest strength is being able to communicate that out to either the public or the team itself. Not every athlete understands advanced metrics. So there is a learning curve, not only with the coaching staff, but the athletes as well. The fourth one I have is off of old school stats. We can't do it without the traditional stats, and that's advanced metrics, advanced stats. So that's where the analytics comes in. They might use Synergy to pull in matchup data and look at tendencies of opponents, or see, hey, we have this one athlete, they're shooting 60% on this spot. We need to run more plays to get them into that spot to get that matchup and get that tendency to live up to what we can do with it. And then the last one, this is kind of a new area. This is where my specialty is. I get excited talking about this all the time, and that is the creation of IoT, Internet of Things, and putting sensors into sport equipment. So the ability to have shot tracker, have smart technology, smart basketballs that not only shows things like RPMs, revolutions per minute on the spin of the ball, but looking at movement patterns of different athletes on the court, looking at pass angles. A couple of years ago, I did a study with a student at Lewis University that looked at the amount of passes, where the passes started and stopped, and then looking at trying to find some trends in that. So analytics is a lot about looking at tendencies and trends, and that comes from data. So if you know your athlete, if your team's health is trending down, you should be able to see that if you have accurate data coming in. So those 5 kind of areas, data collection, health and medical, then the performance health, performance nutrition, then old school stats / advanced stats. And then the last one is looking at IoT collection, which could be wearable technology, right? It could be a Fitbit, it could be a Whoop sensor. There's a variety of them out there, but anything that is considered Internet of Things, we can collect some new interesting data for our sport.
Yeah, wow. The Internet of Things is really interesting. I didn't know there was such a thing as a smart basketball until today. So data collection is great, but what matters most is what we do with that data, right? So when we are talking about a team, who are the decision makers about how this data is used, and who are the people that take advantage of the data that is collected?
So I kind of got ahead of myself, right? Because I came up with 5 areas of data collection, but really we collect data for the decision maker. And if the decision maker doesn't want to see health data and that doesn't factor into their decision-making process, then that data point doesn't need to be collected. So we do have an issue where sometimes we over-collect data, we over-collect information that we aren't going to use, and it kind of clouds up our judgment or makes our decision-making process a little muddier. And then sometimes we're not collecting any data, or collecting data that actually needs to happen, right? Like if you're collecting data, say on sleep, and I know this is a big topic of ethics and things like that right now, is looking at sleep quality. But if you got an athlete who's averaging 2 to 3 hours of sleep a night, you're not going to get their whole performance. You're not going to get the most out of their potential. So no matter what you teach them in the analytical session when you're looking at game film, or if you're on the court in practice and you're trying to get across a point, hey, you're messing this play up all the time. Well, they're on 2 hours of sleep. You know, you can't even solve the problems. So when we look at this, we always go back to the decision maker and trying to work with the decision maker on what data they need and what data they value in their decision-making process. Some leaders, some decision makers rely on more data than others. Some want to trust their gut. Some might only use analytics and data to back up their gut instinct. So this has kind of been the hard part about sports analytics is everywhere you go, every team is going to use data differently because their value systems differently. And they might not be collecting data on something because they don't want to use it in their decision-making process, or 2, they don't know how to use it. And it's also kind of best practice to not over collect, right? Not collect too much data where you don't know what you're using it for. So then you just collect the data and wasted everyone's time. So really working with the decision maker, whether that's the coach, head coach, assistant coach, it could be the athletic director, professional level. We see it at the GM level. We see it at the senior vice president in terms of business operations. They get some data analytics on performance for a variety of reasons. So decision makers depends on where you're going, where you're at, and that'll look different. It will look different everywhere you go.
You sort of touched on this already, but I think as fans, we oftentimes find ourselves in a place where we're watching our team play and we feel like we can really see an obvious blind spot. And it's very frustrating to watch our teams continue to go on without pivoting, without addressing this weakness. And so, can you tell us a little bit about how coaches and teams can use data to identify these blind spots and make strategies that mitigate them?
Looking at stats and analytics, you might not, your coaching staff or your leadership team might not be seeing that data because they're not looking there. They're not asking for that question. So we get stats coming in, right? And stats are one thing, analytics are another. And I have this quote from Fran Fraschilla I use in my class to start every semester in analytics. And this goes back to 2014. And I remember him saying this, I think, on the telecast for the NBA draft. Because everyone wants to say, oh, this person's stats are great in college, they're automatically going to be great in the NBA. Right? It doesn't always match up that way. So his quote here is on coaches: statistics accuse, analytics indict, and videotape convicts. So we get numbers in, right? And you might get a number in for, say, Loyola's free throw percentage, and it might be bad, and everyone knows it's bad. Well, that's no surprise, right? But why are they bad? What's the analytics behind it? Are we taking a lot of free throws late in the half where we're more tired? Is it more pressure situation? Are we missing more of those shots? Is it we're having people who are bad free throw shooters shoot more free throws, right? Have your better free throw shooters in a position to get fouled more. So the stat itself isn't enough. It doesn't really show the whole picture. There's not context to it. When we add analytics over that, when we start making sense of that stat, then we can start to act on it. And that's where some teams adjust better than others. Some coaching staff, some decision makers will adapt quicker than that. They'll look beyond just that stat and think about, why is that stat showing up? So really going back on this decision maker thing, your data architecture that you build for your team does derive from your decision maker and what they want in terms of data coming in, what's going to help them make decisions quicker and more accurate. And again, sometimes you don't want to collect and over collect data.
My last question for you, Zach, because we're all going to go watch the Ramblers play Southern Illinois University after this, is what lens do you bring to a game as a spectator? What sorts of things do you pay attention to on the court, and how do you make sense of the way teams move and their strategies?
Basketball for me, and I was the water boy for my dad's team at like age 3. So I've been in huddles probably way more than I should have been, right? So looking at this is a chess game. This is basing your next move off of your opponent's previous 5 moves. And if you can get out ahead and you can think 3 or 4 moves based on what's going to happen in this next possession, then you're really in a position to cause some havoc on the court. Forcing adjustments and forcing mismatches is kind of what I look into. There's some teams that just will not have an answer for Cameron, right? Expose that, find that, run a play design that's going to put them in a position to maximize that mismatch or to force the other team's adjustment. When we get into, I know college basketball is obviously different than pros, but in the NBA, what we've seen the last 5 years in the playoffs are teams adjusting off of adjustments. And there might be one team that comes in with a game strategy and they're already kind of anticipating the other team to adjust to what they do in the first half, but that first half wasn't their strategy. The real strategy is what they're going to do based off of the reaction of the other team. And you see this with like late game timeouts where a team might call a timeout with 3 seconds left. to set up a play. They come out, they set the play up, and then they'll call another timeout because they wanted to see how the other team was going to adjust. And they need to be a step ahead, 2 steps ahead strategy-wise. You can do that with analytics. You can walk in using synergy. You can look at different matchups. You can look at play designs that are going to work. And you can come in with a game plan with the idea of forcing your opponent, forcing a good opponent. Good opponents will adjust better than others, forcing them to adjust. And then your real strategy is to adjust off of their adjustment. So I always look for that, especially in the NBA. It's all about matchups. It's all about ISO games. It's all about trying to get someone in a pick and roll who can't move their feet, and you're going to blow by them. College level, it is a little different, a little slower paced game, but the matchups are probably a bigger issue, especially if you're playing non-conference teams, because not everyone's going to have someone to stop Cameron, for example. So trying to find those mismatches and maximize those matchups to force adjustments is kind of what I look for.
Thank you, Zach. For those of you joining us, Zach has very graciously agreed to live tweet during the game from the Quinlan Twitter. And his students have created some very interesting infographics and things to complement the game. So if you have any questions for him about what's going on, or you want to hear more about what he's seeing on the court, follow our Twitter feed and tweet him at the handle Loyola Quinlan. Next, we're going to hear from Patrick Wallace, the men's basketball video coordinator, and Quinlan alum Clayton Custer, who is now the director of player development for the men's basketball team. Clay and Patrick, thank you for joining us today. It was really nice to have you guys be available for this. Maybe let's start with how you guys came to Loyola. Patrick, maybe if you want to go first and tell us a bit about your story.
Sounds great. Yeah, so I played basketball in college at North Carolina State as a walk-on, and then I transferred to Charleston Southern on scholarship and played my final 2 years. And then I took a graduate assistant job at Northwestern right up the road. And in my 2 years there, I got to work with 2 former Loyola assistants, Armand Gates and Emmanuel Dildy. And then when Brian Mullins got the Southern Illinois head job, the video spot came open, and I was fortunate enough to get in touch with Coach Moser. And I came and joined on staff in April of 2019. So I've been there as a video coordinator since then. Yep.
Great. And Clay, how was your journey with Loyola?
Yeah. So obviously I was at Loyola for 4 years, played basketball, had an unbelievable experience, not only on the basketball team, but at Quinlan, and then also just at Loyola as a whole. Just love everything about the university, obviously. Once my playing career was over, I took a shot at playing overseas. I played overseas in Poland for about 4 months. I was over there. And then kind of decided that I was ready to be done with my playing career. And once my playing career was over, I actually ended up taking a job downtown. Just took a shot working in the business world. Worked at Northwestern Mutual downtown for about 10 months. And enjoyed my experience there. I have nothing but good things to say about it. But I just missed the game. I missed the game so much. It's been such a big part of my life, and the game kind of called me back, and now I'm excited to be getting my coaching career started this year, and it's been a blast so far.
I'd love to talk more in depth about what your jobs are. So Clay, you are now the director of player development. What does that entail for the team?
Basically anything just to help the players get better. Whether that's giving the guys pointers, trying to get the guys better with certain drills, stuff like that. The other thing is doing a lot of, Pat's the video coordinator, but we all know how to use the software. Pat's just better than us at using the software, but like going through pulling clips from games and watching film with some of the players and showing them areas where maybe they can get a little bit better, or showing them reads that they can make coming off certain plays that we have and all that stuff. So obviously I played in the system at Loyola, so I kind of know what we're trying to do on the offensive end of the floor and on the defensive end of the floor. So I'm just kind of like an extension and of the whole coaching staff trying to help the guys get better.
And Patrick, we've been spending a lot of time today talking about using data and analytics. And as Clay alluded to, your job has a lot to do with that. So can you tell us about your role and your day-to-day?
Yeah, for sure. So video coordinator, as Clay kind of talked about, we're all kind of like coaches, right? Like we all want to become head coaches and lead our own program, and there's different steps along the way. We all, I think a big part of my role is helping our coaches get the film, get the right information, to make the best decisions possible for the games, right? Like that's what numbers do, analytics wise, all that stuff. So I do a little bit of what Clay does too, like pulling clips for guys, watching film with guys, get on the court, all that stuff, which is good. But I also try to evaluate stuff off the court, right? Like our offensive efficiency, defensive efficiency, if we do like a post double or, whatever it may be. Me and Clay both try to evaluate those things. That's kind of how our roles intertwine a little bit. So that, like a lot of the stuff is, scouting preparation based, right? So we played Drake this weekend. We're trying to prepare for Drake. So like Clay's watching blobs and slobs, right? Like baseline side out plays. Like I'm watching their defense. Some other of our coaches are watching other things that kind of Coach Moser assigns us, right? It could change every game. We rotate scouts, all that stuff. So I just try to help. And like Clay said, do whatever I can to help the coaching staff, be like a utility guy. So like, that's just a little bit about my role. And then the off season, I try to, go through those analytics and, we'll meet as a staff and giving everyone numbers on different things that could potentially help us get better for the next season. And then just helping our players get better.
So what sorts of things do you track and how do you use them to inform your coaching?
Yeah, for sure. So we use a couple different websites. We use Synergy Sports Tech, KenPom, and Hoop Math for our like evaluation. Basically, all what these websites do is they kind of split up the film for different areas of the game, right? So like if we're looking at a player, say we're looking at Clay's, am I allowed to share my screen? You see my screen?
Yeah.
Yes, sir, Pat. Yes, sir.
All right. So if we're looking at a player, like just say we're looking at Clayton Custer, right? Like from 2017-18. This is a Synergy interface, right? So this is like his whole profile that we look at players, right? So for instance, he scored 436 points, his points per possession. So that's a big stat, right? Like how efficient was he in his possessions? And it says excellent, right? So we're like, all right, this is, we already kind of know that Clay's a key part of the team, right? If we're scouting Loyola's team. So it's good to see these numbers, right? And then it kind of splits up the play types at the bottom, right? Like he was in a lot of pick and roll situations, right? Ball screen situations. He's really good in transition, 34 of 60 from the field. And then off screens, as you go along, like, so you can kind of see this is the kind of stuff we look at as a coaching staff and we evaluate. And then if you look at, if we keep looking at Clay's profile here, this is his KenPom profile. So this is another website. You can look at like just different things, right? And they give you player comparisons, turnover rate, effective field goal percentage. And I think it's good to look at numbers like this, right? So like, for instance, his offensive ratings way higher as a junior. Like you just kind of see, you're like, all right, he was a big integral piece of the Final Four team, right? Or whatever it is. And you can kind of evaluate these numbers as you go. To get a little deeper, I guess, we also use Synergy to kind of look at like statistics like this. So catch and shoot, guarded versus unguarded. So we kind of look at that like, all right, did someone contest his shot or did they not contest his shot? He's shooting a higher percentage when he's not contesting it, like when he's not having someone contest his shot off the dribble. So it was excellent. So it's something we evaluate as a coaching staff. All right, Clayton Custer as a junior at Loyola was 40 of 71 on all jump shots off the dribble. So that's an important stat. So we make decisions based on the numbers. Just a couple things there, but like those are just the kind of things we evaluate. I wanted to just show Clay because it's an easy, obviously he was a great player at Loyola and he has great numbers. So it's always nice to look at great numbers. So yeah, that's basically like how we evaluate those. And, you know, you make the biggest thing with the numbers is like, you don't want it to like make your decision for you, but you want it to help you make an educated guess of like what you should be doing. Right. So that's just basically you know, a small portion of like what we kind of do for our coaching staff.
The two of you have access to all these stats, watch this video, have a lot of information about your opponents and the teams you're going to be playing. How do you go about communicating that with the team so that they have the information they need when they're on the court?
Yeah. You want me to answer or Clay?
Clay, why don't you go first, and then Patrick, you can supplement.
All right, I can take this one. So, I mean, obviously we meet as a staff and we go over all the information that Pat just talked about. Coach might ask Pat to pull all of Clayton Custer's off the dribble 3-point shots or something like that. And maybe Clayton Custer's only shooting 30% when he shoots a three when he's off the dribble. So we take that information and we're like, okay, well, if there's something we're going to give up, we want to give up off the dribble threes. So then when we go talk to our team, we'll tell them, you know, we're going to go under ball screens on Clayton Custer because we're not worried about him stopping behind it and shooting a three off the dribble. So kind of like Pat was saying, you know, we're making decisions based on the analytics. Obviously there's still a lot of the eye test and us making decisions based off what we think about the players, not just the numbers. So like Pat said, you know, it's just guiding our decision-making process. But that's just one example of something. We're making we're taking things away that they're good at, and we might give up some things that they're not so good at, you know, and it's pretty easy to just tell the guys, you know, this is why we're going to let him shoot this shot because we don't think he can make it at a very high percentage.
Yeah, to piggyback off what Clay was saying and it's important because it gives you a competitive advantage, right? Like seeing those numbers, taking the time to learn the numbers. But like Clay also said, like, let it guide you. I wouldn't say let it make the decision because you do at the end of the day as a basketball coach, you have, you know, a little bit of pride in your feel as a coach, right? Like you want to say like, I don't think so. I think he makes plays off the film I've seen, right? Like we had a case in one of our games this season where a guy's analytics was kind of defied in the game because he hit a couple off the dribble shots when we were giving that up, right? And when he hit them, you have to consider an adjustment despite the numbers because it could potentially win or lose you a game. So that I think that's really important. And I think the more stuff, I think what me and Clay can do for our staff is basically take the numbers and make it a very, very simple message to Coach Moser. We want to make it easy for him. We don't want him. We sift through all the numbers and we give him something that he can look at. You know, we communicate that to, hey, Coach Clayton Custer, he's not shooting well in this position. He's not really good off screens or he's not good off handoffs, whatever it may be in the game. Changes every game because there's just different personnel and different strategies from different teams in non-conference and the Missouri Valley. So we want to make it easy for him to make decisions, right? Because he has a lot of decisions on his plate every game. So we try to do that. And I think the numbers put him at ease a little bit because he can lean on the numbers a little bit, if that makes sense.
I'd like to pivot a little bit to talk about this season. Obviously, things are different this year because even like the fact that we're here, like normally Quinlan would be hosting an event and then we'd go cheer you guys on in Gentile Arena, and that's just not possible. So what are some of the ways that like the act of coaching and practice and just the logistics of the season have changed this year?
Clay, you can go first if you want.
Okay. I mean, obviously the part about it that is the worst is that we can't fill up Gentile Arena every week. We wish we could do that. And that's part of why you love the game is the excitement and the spirit that we have towards the basketball program at Loyola right now is second to none. You know, we're selling out games, just the passion that our fan base has is big time. And that's the part that we miss the most about it. But other than that, it's just being super cognizant of your surroundings at all times. We all have to keep a very small bubble. I mean, we can't go hang out with friends. We can't be doing normal stuff that we would like to be doing. But that's a sacrifice that we have to make because we care about the team and we like the way our team's playing this year. And we obviously don't want to get shut down and lose some of that momentum. So it's definitely a tough year, but I think that the way our team's handled it has been great. I think our guys have really came together and kind of became closer because of it. And I don't know. I think our team's in a great place. And I'm excited to see how we finish up the year.
Yeah, I agree with Clay. I really miss going into Gentile Arena, a packed house, and seeing being at a home game and feeling that environment. Because it's an important part of, our university and our basketball program. I think it's huge, and me and Clay always talk about it, like we wish it was normal. We're ready for whenever it clears up. I think me and Clay also, speak on this a lot, is like the uncertainty of our schedule. And I'm sure you've seen a lot this season, teams playing teams that they never really would have played before. Or they're playing on short notice. The first time we were supposed to play Drake, we had a whole week of practice, and then we find out Friday that we're playing Sunday at Indiana State because Drake got COVID. So I think that's probably been the biggest challenge. I think it's a little bit more, flexible and easier in conference play, but in non-conference, there were nights where we were going into a week and we didn't know if a team had COVID or not. You got to do your homework early, especially in our positions, to set up our coaching staff to have success in scouting, because if you don't, then you're going to really screw your team over and you're letting your team down. So I think that's probably been the biggest challenge. I think, also with what Clay was saying, like you can't go out to eat in a restaurant. You got to be super mindful, and, putting the team first is sacrificing your off the court life. So I think it's, definitely looking forward to getting some pizza and sitting down in a restaurant sooner than later. But, it's the sacrifice you have to make to, have that momentum through the postseason. So looking forward to that, and definitely miss Gentile Arena rocking.
So I've been watching the schedule change very rapidly, as you were talking about. And one of the things I've been wondering about, and maybe I'm just uninformed, but are there minimums that need to be met in order to go to conference? And have we been able to meet those minimums?
Yeah, so there's a 13 game limit by the NCAA that you have to get to be eligible for the NCAA tournament. I don't think the conference has established a minimum amount of games that you have to get in conference, but 13 is we've already exceeded that. At the beginning of the year, I was a little worried, but I really didn't think we'd have that issue. So yeah, we've already exceeded it. We're eligible for both, so we're good to go.
In closing, I'd just like to hear what you guys have thought about the season in general so far. From where I'm sitting, it seems like things are pretty strong and we're doing really great. But what's it like on the inside, and what are you hoping for the future, and what are you worried about moving forward?
I mean, I think we're pretty happy about how the season's gone so far. Obviously, we've gotten our program to the point where we expect to win any game that we show up to, and I think that's a sign of a good program. We lost to Wisconsin, we lost to Richmond early in the year. Those are two really, really good teams, but it's exciting because we were disappointed that we didn't win those games. We were going into those games expecting to win. And I think we got better from those losses, and I think it's shown in our play now. We're playing very well, and it's a testament to Coach Mosier and where he's gotten the program to a point. It's something to be proud of. But yeah, moving forward, I mean, we're taking it one game at a time. We obviously have a big weekend this weekend against Drake. We're tied for first with Drake, so obviously going to be a huge weekend as far as trying to win the conference championship in the regular season. But, I think we're confident. We're going to Des Moines to play them, and just obviously trying to get a conference championship regular season. We're trying to get a conference tournament championship and go to the NCAA tournament and see what happens there. So I'm happy with where our team's at. I love everything about what we're doing right now, and excited to see what happens.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with Clay. I'm extremely excited where our team is at. And we always talk about our process and this not being the destination, right? Like it's a continual process, and that's kind of it's what Coach Moser's built. And it's also what Clay did when he played here. Like he took him, like, you go to another level, you got to keep that expectation, right? Like Krutwig, Lucas, all those guys are leading us really well. Tate Hall, like Keith Clemens, Braden Norris, all those, I could name everybody. They're all great leaders. Well, we're still hungry for more, right? Like we're 12-1 right now, first in the league, but we're worried about is winning the first game at Drake. It's one day at a time. Have a great practice the next day, stack practices. And we're excited that with what Clay said is, we're trying to go to the NCAA tournament and make some noise, but we don't get there without beating Drake the first night. And that's all we're worried about right now. It could seem cliche to say, but that's really how our program is. And I think that's why it's a special program.
Well, thank you both for joining us tonight. It was really nice to talk to you and to get this inside look into how coaching works.
For sure. Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us, Rick.